Mel and Lindsay, depends on where you are. You will likely see active weather definitely in northeastern Ontario. As we're heading into the maritime provinces, you can see right here. But Newfoundland, Labrador, it's looking all right for right now. But it's this rain that we're really watching. Without the rain, it is going to be a rather humid day, depending on where you're tuning in from. Ontario, Quebec, and even into the Atlantic provinces, that humidity is definitely present. So it feels quite muggy for many communities. Now, in terms of the heaviest rainfall, it's east of Superior. This morning, we've got some heavier pockets just north of the greater Sudbury area. This rain is prompting special weather statements from Environment Canada. They were first issued last night. Now they are continuing this morning. They've actually been extended. Some communities could see upwards of about 50 millimeters of rain, so that's a whole lot through the day today. Some of the bigger communities, you can see the totals here. Sault Ste. Marie, around 30 millimeters. Right in between Chapleau and Sault Ste. Marie, that's where we could get in some heavier pockets. That's closer to the 50 millimeter range. Now, in terms of the Ontario forecast, outside of that heavy rain, we do have an isolated thunderstorm risk across southern Ontario, and we could be getting into severe weather position later on today. Biggest concerns with these storms will likely be intense wind, heavy rainfall, and hail as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do see watches and warnings issued later on this morning into early afternoon. Now, those storms will likely last until midnight. They do begin to push eastward, and so Sherbrooke, Quebec City, you both have a risk of thunderstorm. Montreal, we've got partly cloudy here, but I would not rule out a shower, so please bring along your umbrella today. You don't want to get caught off guard, especially on your Friday. Atlantic Canada, I mentioned a nicer forecast, but portions of New Brunswick will likely be dealing with thunderstorms, including Fredericton. 27 is your daytime high with that risk of afternoon active weather. So that's just eastern Canada. We've also got details on a third confirmed tornado in Ontario from last week, plus heat advisories in Alberta and air quality advisories for British Columbia. That's coming up later on in the program. For now, here's a look at your local forecast. Later on today, we are talking severe thunderstorm warnings and watches in portions of Ontario, Quebec, even into New Brunswick. It wouldn't be out of the question. This morning, though, if you're heading out the door, very mild temperatures. I mean, look at Toronto, currently sitting at 21 degrees Celsius. Not much movement in the mercury, though, across portions of Ontario today, as we are seeing a rainier forecast as a low moves its way very slowly across the Great Lakes. Much cooler in Winnipeg and Thunder Bay, both sitting in single digits. So for the east, this is how the day progresses. For Atlantic Canada, it's pretty good. Save for those thunderstorms that move into New Brunswick later on. Generally a very sunny afternoon, but through portions of central and southern Quebec and then east of Lake Superior, we really see this wet forecast. This afternoon, as the front moves its way eastward along the Great Lakes, we will see likely severe thunderstorms developing through southern Ontario. Further north, this rain continues, and if thunderstorms do develop, we could be getting into an intense rain situation. Some communities east of Superior have already seen maybe 20 to 30 millimeters of rain. They'll likely see a wee bit more as we head in through the day today and more in those thunderstorms. Southern Quebec, this rain continues in portions of communities north of Montreal and through towards Quebec City quite heavily into Saturday morning. Then we see heavier rain moving into Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and eastern New Brunswick as we head into Saturday night. This becomes a rather rainy weekend in Atlantic Canada, so please know that the sunshine you have today isn't necessarily going to last. So this morning we are obviously tracking this heavy rain and thunderstorm activity east of Superior. Special weather statements are still in effect because of the amount of rain, and you can see the rainfall totals are quite ample. Where we've got some of the hottest temperatures, Mel, it's really interesting this morning, are in the Northwest Territories. Fort Simpson Airport is the hotspot in Canada in the Northwest Territories. This hour, 22.2 degrees Celsius. Yesterday, there was some record hot outside having to wear full-on coveralls and protective equipment. This morning, we've got nocturnal thunderstorms that are still raging in some communities early this morning through portions of Quebec. Heavier rain east of Superior. South of the border, we've got a few thunderstorm cells as well in New Brunswick. Heads up, they're heading towards you. So depending on where you are in Atlantic Canada, it might be a stormier end to the work week. Otherwise, it looks pretty good. I mean, 26 today in Halifax. It will be quite humid today right across the Atlantic provinces with that humidity persisting not just for the Maritimes, for example, but also through southern Quebec and then portions of northeastern and southern Ontario. The northwest of Ontario Ontario looking much less muggy than the rest of the province. Now for Quebec, there is an isolated risk of thunderstorms, and we could be getting into a severe category as we head into this afternoon through Quebec City, the eastern townships. Montreal, you do have a risk of showers in your forecast, so please do not leave the house without an umbrella for today. 28 is your daytime high. Heaviest rain in Ontario today will be east of Lake Superior, with not only rain that brought about 20 to 30 millimeters of rain overnight, but another 10 to 20 today. But there should be some embedded thunderstorms in there later on this afternoon as well. So Environment Canada has continued that special weather statement because of the heavy rain. It's not quite warning criteria, but it's enough that it's notable. Across Ontario, you can see that isolated risk of thunderstorm in the south, and again, we could be getting into a severe category. For the prairies this morning, we've got thunderstorms in southern Alberta and Saskatchewan. This afternoon, nice and hot, but there is the risk of some storms developing depending on where you are in the foothills and then through Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Heat warnings still persist for northern Alberta and then into BC. The hot weather continues. Hey, I've got some good news about the air quality. Widespread advisories today, and we'll detail that coming up. But there is an improvement for Vancouver as we head into the weekend. We'll detail why in the next half hour. Now it's over to Mel.
That's a great pick.
I've looked at that photo a lot. Denise, thanks for sending it in. That was a good Friday giggle. This morning, Atlantic Canada, I mean, you've got the sun later on today. There's a wee bit of cloud this morning, and New Brunswick, you do have a risk of thunderstorm, and some could become isolated severe storms. So watch out for any watches or warnings issued in your area, but generally temperatures in the mid to high 20s today across the 4 Atlantic provinces. Lab City, you're only at 18, sorry. 27 today in Quebec City. You've got a risk of thunderstorm, and we see that risk extending down through the eastern townships. Montreal, you could have a shower or two. Ottawa, again, thunderstorms are possible. Through northeastern Ontario, rain, for sure the biggest factor, with a risk of thunderstorm as well. Southern Ontario also dealing with a lot of cloud today, very humid weather, and the risk of afternoon storms developing. Again, severe storms are not out of the question. So hail, heavy downpours, and strong winds, for sure a factor off the shores of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. Thunder Bay, you've got wetter weather in your forecast as well. And then we see the sunshine return as we head into Manitoba. This is a similar trend to what we've had through much of the last couple of weeks, where the weather is fairly benign. Without, not saying without thunderstorms, just a lot of them have been non-severe. We saw storms in Edmonton yesterday, very strong wind gusts that definitely played a havoc with the Edmonton Folk Festival. Today, the forecast looks to be better, but thunderstorms are still firing up this morning along the southern foothills in Alberta and stretching into Saskatchewan as well. A little more sunshine into the afternoon, but again, that risk of active weather will persist for the prairies later on today. Into BC, hot weather continues, but I mentioned some good news. We've got this air quality advisory that's been in place for so long. It's actually been extended today further north, but there's likely to be improvement into tomorrow for Vancouver Island because this ridge of high pressure will begin to move its way eastward. And as it does, fresher air will move its way finally onto the southern BC coastline, so the air quality for Vancouver should improve into the weekend. That's a look across the country. Now here's your local forecast.
Weather forecast keeping a close eye, kind of active everywhere.
Yeah, we have thunderstorms in Alberta and Saskatchewan. We've got heavy rain in Ontario, thunderstorms in Quebec, and pushing in towards New Brunswick. So a whole lot going on. We've got heat, too, but it's not where we would expect it. It's in the Northwest Territories this morning. DeLine in the Northwest Territories is Canada's hotspot at 22.1 degrees Celsius currently. And yesterday, there were 2 new record highs, sample sitting at 18 degrees. Further south, you can see temperatures are a touch cooler until you hit southern Ontario and southern Quebec, where we're in the low 20s as well. Very muggy day in portions of eastern Canada, including northeastern Ontario, southern Ontario, Quebec, southern Quebec in particular, and the Maritimes as well. There's a look at that wetter weather we're seeing this morning. So if you are dealing with showers in Ontario and Quebec, know that it's pretty well consistent through the day. If you need a break from the rain, head over to Atlantic Canada. Generally, it's looking pretty good, though Fredericton, I would keep a risk of thunderstorm in your forecast later on today. Here's our water vapor imagery, and so we can really see where that humidity is lingering, and it is going to feel quite sticky in some communities, not necessarily because of the sun, but just the amount of humidity in the air. Toronto, for example, will sit at about 24, but feeling close to 30. Southern Quebec, you can see the risk of thunderstorm. Montreal, you also have showers in your forecast, though it's not indicated here. Keep your umbrella with you. 28 degrees is your daytime high. Heaviest rain this morning in Ontario is just east off of Superior. It will persist through the day today. Many communities part of me have already received 30 millimeters of rain. More is expected, hence the special weather statement from Environment Canada. Now, south of that, we're seeing the risk of thunderstorms, and some of these could become severe a little bit later on today, so watch out for watches and warnings that do get issued for today. Now, into the prairie provinces, looks pretty good, but this morning we've got active weather south of Calgary, south of the Trans-Canada thunderstorms, and then into southeast Saskatchewan as well. We just had those watches issued and warnings this morning, so we'll get more into that in the next little bit. But heat warnings do persist for northern Alberta. Quick look at BC, and you can see 32 in Revelstoke today, 36 in Penticton. There is good news on the horizon in terms of air quality. We'll detail that in the next half hour. Now over to Mel. Summer 2017, and in the east it has been quite unsettled. That continues today. The west, surprise, it's hot and dry once again. So we'll detail across the country what you can expect for your Friday. Generally, Atlantic Canada, we've got a mix of sun and cloud, bit of fog this morning, particularly southern Nova Scotia, and then the Avalon Peninsula in Newfoundland. And into New Brunswick, you do have a risk of thunderstorms, potentially severe, as we head into the afternoon. Fredericton, I am including you in that risk. We also see a thunderstorm risk persisting through Quebec, particularly Quebec City through the eastern townships. Montreal, you've got some rain as well. Ottawa, risk of thunderstorm. Now, northeastern Ontario dealing with very heavy rain, pockets continuing from overnight last night into today, and we're getting totals up to about 50 millimeters, including what's already fallen. So 21 today in Sault Ste. Marie, North Bay, you can also anticipate that rain. Further south, we're generally seeing a risk of thunderstorm, potentially severe, into the afternoon. Hail, heavy downpours, very strong winds as well. Watch out for watches and warnings from Environment Canada. They're likely later on today. Now into northern Ontario, northwest Ontario, Thunder Bay, you're also under that precipitation risk. We see sunshine return as we head into Winnipeg, and generally a pretty nice forecast in the west. That fire weather continues in BC though, and this morning we do have a few showers and thunderstorms that are dotting the horizon. So south of Calgary, severe thunderstorm warnings have been issued because of the heavy downpours, potential for hail as well. Further north in northern Alberta, heat warnings still in effect, and BC, we're seeing that continued air quality advisory. But there is good news for Vancouver Island as this ridge of high pressure pushes its way eastward and begins to depress. We will likely see fresh air moving its way into Vancouver Island for the weekend. That will spread eastward towards Metro Vancouver. Expect the air quality to improve Saturday and Sunday with the return of blue sky. Now here's a look at your local forecast.